Greetings. Today is Wednesday, April 21st. Some of you may not see this until next week. But those of you who will watch this before Sunday, the 24th, just to let you know that I will be taking that Sunday off and the following week. Mike will be preaching for me this Sunday, and I will be taking the following week off. I am going to be doing some mad packing and trying to get things organized at my home and ready for my move to Albuquerque, where I will be starting another interim assignment on May 10th. So that's what I have to look forward to next week, taking that time away to take care of some personal things. Along those lines, let's take a moment just to pause and think about the way that God has walked with us through the previous year and a half during this pandemic. And we are still feeling the weight of having to make the adjustments to this virus and all that brings with it. You can see I'm sitting in the sanctuary with empty pews behind me. If you will recall, a little over a year ago, we closed down the building, and Liz and I worked remotely. We worked from home for a few weeks, and then we started up with the online worship service. And can you imagine, this is what I would preach to, is what you see behind me, empty pews, except for Gail and Susan, who was playing the piano, the liturgist. That was it. A year ago, this space was empty, more or less, on Sunday mornings. And we had to gather virtually. With every fiber of our being, we had to draw on the grace and the power of God to hold us and to remind us that we are still gathered in spirit for worship, even though we could not be together. And here we find ourselves in April of 2021 with an opening of sorts. We have been open for several weeks for Sunday worship at a very reduced rate, social distancing at 6 feet and wearing of masks for those who felt comfortable enough to gather. Now, with the changes coming from the CDC and the rise in vaccinations, we are seeing a change in terms of proximity, but still wearing masks. The session is taking a look at what it would look like if we reduce the space from 6 feet to 3 feet. So measurements have been taken in the sanctuary. How does that fit for where we are? How many more people and where would they need to be situated in the pews to accommodate 3 feet distancing rather than 6 feet? That is what the session is taking a look at now. So please stay tuned for more information and details as they come. I'm just always here to give a heads up and to share with you ideas that are being talked about, the details of which come later. But I did want to introduce that idea to you. We're looking at reducing the space from 6 feet apart to 3 feet apart, but still wearing masks whenever we gather. So that is something to look forward to see how that works out for worship. Again, we do have the space available right now, 6 feet apart here and in the overflow space, but also over in Palmer Center, which we really have not had to use right now. But just to remind you of those pieces that are in place. We've been able to go through the liturgical seasons of last year, Lent and Holy Week, Advent, Christmas, and now this year with a modification and a change, we went through another Lent and Holy Week. We're coming up on Pentecost next month in May, and let's recall what that means in terms of us remembering Pentecost and the blowing of the Spirit across the disciples, making them bold and and sending them out as apostles. So we too are enlivened and empowered to be more than disciples, but apostles in our own way, carrying the message of God's saving love and grace. So I'm going to put the links of some articles in the weekly e-newsletter, one that talks about worship and what different churches have been doing around worship. So the title has something to do with worship is not something that you consume. It's not, in other words, it's not a spectator sport. Worship online is not a spectator sport, but something we really work into. We hope can be something that you participate in as you're able, and that you can feel a sense of worship and community still with your GPC family. So that's one article. Another article is about youth in the marketplace. And that's a very interesting article about ministry done with youth and taking them out into the world and engaging the marketplace. So I hope you'll look for that article as well. There is a third article, and now it slips my mind. Can't remember what it is, but I know it's important, and it's mental health. Yes. The need for mental health ministries, which I thought was important during this time where we're all feeling our mental health stressed and strained. And that article talks about taking away the stigma of talking about mental health, because just as if you broke an arm or a limb and you would go see a doctor, our minds and our feelings, our emotions are battered about by the circumstances and stressors of life, especially with what we've experienced over the past year. And so much so that our mental health becomes challenged in various ways because of that stress and the lack of social engagement and the lack of touch. Even the lack of touch can affect our mental health because we are hardwired for touch. We are hardwired to see the whole human face. When we don't have that, then it weighs heavy on us, so much so that we can feel the stressors much more than ordinarily we might. So that article again is about the development and the need for mental health ministries. I think you'll find it interesting and informative and something to think about in your own thoughts about the ministries of GPC. A final piece in that article is that the pastor is not a therapist. So that's an important piece for all churches to remember. The pastor can do short-term pastoral care unless they are licensed as a counselor. That's different. But most of us are not licensed as therapists or as counselors, and so we can do short-term, immediate kinds of pastoral responses and help you to make a connection long-term if you need that assistance, if you need that support. And so it really does help if a pastor knows counselors in the area, which is something I always did whenever I was either an associate director of a nonprofit or an associate pastor at a church or associate executive presbyter. I'm always been these associates, but wherever I was, I would make sure I knew who were my colleagues for support in the area so that I could refer folks as I came across them in my pastoral encounters. I would know of places to refer and individuals. I would know them personally that I could refer folks to these organizations and to counselors. So that's another piece of ministry. And I just wanted to share that in terms of, again, broadening perspective about where is it that the Holy Spirit may be leading and guiding GPC into the future, given where we are as a society, where we are in terms of dealing with this virtual presence, online presence, which means we don't really have the social interactions that we used to. And realizing that we are not going to be able to go back to the way it was pre-pandemic, or because of this virus. we don't get herd immunity, that virus is going to be around for a long, long time, and we will continually need to protect ourselves against that virus, whether it's through masking, continuing to wash our hands, whatever may be the case, in order to take those safety precautions. So I know that's a lot to take in, but we are working through this together. So this is my final video. I won't be putting one out next week when I'm off. I'll ask Liz to send some music, a video of maybe some YouTube music, some sacred music, or something to a devotional of some type that you can use and access next week in place of from the pastor, because I will be here. So thank you for taking this time with me, and I look forward to returning to worship on May the 2nd, which will be my last Sunday. It will be a communion Sunday, and that will be a special time because we will be remembering that we gather around the Lord's table because he invites us all, and that communion, that connection joins us across time and across space. And so I look forward to one final time in person here at GPC with you on a Communion Sunday. Thank you for joining me.